Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks. Welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's the first day of July, coming up on the 250th anniversary of this great nation. You can say anything you want until you've been somewhere else. Trust me, it's much better here, no matter what kind of BS you're thinking about. So why not have somebody here to answer one of the great American questions? And this is, was the guy who lived next door to you wearing a tin hat? Was he right or not? And we need to do these kind of things. And as I told the gentleman beforehand, I'm glad he's not close by, because in my 20 years in the Marine Corps, I used to always say this: the biggest, strongest, most cock diesel person you were ever going to meet in your unit was probably from the same state that this gentleman's from, and that's Ohio. So joining us all the way from the middle of the state, it's Mr. Ed Wilson.
That's a great introduction, Sean. Yeah, that's true. They grow them big here in Ohio. We've got that Ohio State football team that needs filled up, although we usually we'll take a couple guys from Florida to do the job usually.
Well, that's the fast guys are normally from out there in Florida. The rest of them, they got it figured out. So today we're going to be talking about when documented history raises more questions than answers. Ed's going to be talking about the Gemini. Is it 9? Is that right, Ed?
Gemini 11 XI.
I was trying to remember if it was the X before the I was addition, if the lower number was before the higher number, if it was addition. I couldn't remember how it worked out. So
why we use Roman numerals, who knows, huh?
I don't, but it's for those of us like you and me who feel like we should understand it. I still remember getting taught Roman numerals in elementary school. That was still a thing. Like, they taught you how to read Roman numerals. I went to Catholic school, so it explains all of that. You had to know these things. Which pope you were trying to figure out. He was through the math. I don't know. But either way, so before we get into this and talking about the Gemini 9 program, the lost documentations and history here, folks, I want to talk to you about our big board over my right shoulder. Oh, I forgot my sticker. Crap. Hold on, Ed. I got to go grab a sticker here real quick. This is important stuff here. So talk to everybody for a second, Ed.
Yeah. Well, guys, while he's getting the sticker, I'll tell you, I'm Ed Wilson. I'm from Mount Vernon, Ohio, and you're going to hear an amazing UFO story today. But I want to tell you, first of all, I'm not a UFO guy. For the last 20 years, I've been a rare book and document dealer. So you will hear some things, but it's not because I'm a UFO guy. You're going to hear something from a researcher.
All right. Good job, Ed. Thank you. You did an amazing job. You're my new co-host. You're hired. You're hired.
Great.
All right. So here's today's sticker, folks. As I tell everybody, if you have something you're supporting, something you're believing in, any of those things, you can reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, X. Our website is the abovethebarpodcast.com. Our email is theabovethebarpodcast@gmail.com, and you can reach out to us. So this week's sticker, I think this is one of the coolest things I've seen in a while. I was a kid who, if you handed me a box of Matchbox cars or Hot Wheels when I was younger, I would have been there for hours. I would have figured out ways to build tunnels out of cushions and all those kind of things. So a new good buddy of mine, Brent, has a thing on YouTube and Instagram called Timber Creek Speedway. Did you play with cars when you were a kid there, Ed? Little Matchbox?
Army Jeeps. I loved Army Jeeps. I used them to run into dinosaurs.
Perfect. So this is right up your alley. So what they do here at Timber Creek is, I believe it's $5. You send him a souped up Matchbox car. He actually gave me one, and I'm going to figure out how to do it. So he gave me my first one right here. It's an exotic. But what they do here is people take these. They take $1.25 Matchbox, undo the car, take the body off of it, polish the axle that's inside of there, and then put a weight on it. And then you send it to him for $5, and he races them on a track and gives you your speed times. And it goes around a couple of things. And the Timber Creek looks like a little mountain range. It's got little things and stuff like that, observers off to the side. So Check out Timber Creek Speedway on Instagram and on YouTube. See what Brent's got going on. Everybody give him a quick follow. We'll get the sticker up here tonight at some point, but definitely a well worth it to check out there, folks. And then we got to talk about the people that pay the bills around here. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson, Cooksaki, Schoharie, Delmar, Clifton Park. Uh, this is North America's largest custom window treatment company, handling everything from blind, shade, shutter, drapery, you name it. They're taking care of it. So make sure you're reaching out to your local Budget Blinds. And if you're in the capital region, this month's sale is 20% off of all product. And anytime you tell them you're there to belly up to the bar, they're going to give you an extra 5% off of that.
Well,
Again, folks, this is old school. This is, let me come to your house. Let me measure it. My own people install it. They're handling everything. If you have an issue, you're not asking a kid with blue hair who's too busy looking at their phone, who doesn't know the difference between a blind and a shade, which one you should pick. You're actually talking to somebody that this is what they do all day. So make sure you're reaching out to Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson, Cooksaki, Schoharie, Delmar, and Clifton Park. Your number one place for looking for custom window treatment company. All right, Ed. So all that's done. Everybody's gotten their bills paid. I want to flip back over here and look at my notes on you. So I want to make sure I got this right. You're the author of 3 books investigating into the lost NASA Gemini XI images. What has been identified as a sanitized intelligence briefing documented derived from mission films. First off, let's start with this. Let's start with, what was the Gemini 11 program?
Well, the Gemini program was the precursor to the Apollo program. It followed the Mercury program, which was the first experimental stage of space exploration for the United States. The Gemini program was designed to master all the things that would be necessary to successfully complete the Apollo program. And the most important task of the Gemini 11 mission was called the M+1 experiment. There were 13 experiments, but this was the major one. When the Apollo spacecraft was sent to the moon to land the first man on the moon, they had to fire the lunar module from the moon back up to the command module and rendezvous to return to Earth. If that could not successfully be done in one orbit, then they would not have enough fuel to return home. The Gemini 11 was the first time that they tried and rehearsed several times the M+1 orbit. So they launched the Agena capsule, then they launched the Gemini 11 capsule, and they rendezvoused within one orbit and linked up. And that was the breaking point that meant that they could continue with the Apollo program and they would have the tools necessary to land a man on the moon. So that was the number one priority of the Gemini 11 mission.
I got to ask this question. So as you're explaining that, is that the missing thing when people, as you explain this, it's kind of interesting to me. Like my wife, if she was down here, she would thoroughly tell you that nobody landed on the moon. She does not believe the moon landing ever happened.
That's so interesting.
And I'm just the opposite, because my birthday is July 20th, which is the So if for those of you who don't know, was July 20th, 1969. I was born in 76.
And you remember the day it happened, and you probably remember looking out at night up at the full moon that we had here in North America and thinking, my God, there are men up there.
Well, I wasn't born yet when it happened, but I know as a kid that it was explained to me, and it was, I can still remember the first teacher that was like, hey, your birthday is the day somebody walked on the moon, and she was like, oh, that makes you a moon baby, and stuff like that, and it was interesting to me. But just as the way you explained that link up and what it did for us, is that maybe the element that a lot of people are missing to understand that, yes, this really did happen, whether it was not Stanley Kubrick and he did not make a film of it, is that the element that you think a lot of people are missing in that?
Well, it's part of the element. Part of the element is the history of it. These stories are so complicated. I've worked for 3 years, written 3 books The first one, 650 pages. I had to throw out 300 pages to get it down to 650 pages.
Oh, wow.
The documents that I have poured through are enormous. There are volumes and volumes and volumes of data that show to me personally that, this is beyond the hoax stage. But let me say one thing. One thing that I would never fault is for someone to have their own personal beliefs. I've been wrong in my life. I'm willing to listen. I'm not going to tell someone that the earth isn't flat. I'm not going to tell them that the moon launch was not staged. That's not my position. You have a position in life and you have to stick to your guns, but you also have to be open-minded. I try to be open-minded. Maybe you could prove me wrong, but from what I see when I walk by the huge Saturn V rocket there at NASA and traveled the 365-foot distance of it, when I watched the tremendous power of Elon Musk space vehicle pounding on people's chests from far across, it's, for me, enough evidence. But I will not fault anyone. I won't fault anyone. We all have our causes in life. And hey, wherever it takes you, be kind, be open-minded, and do your best. But that's all a person can do is his best. We're all wrong from time to time.
This is why Ed's already better than me, folks, because I'm going to tell you right now, the earth is not flat. Suck it up, Buttercup. You can tell me the map, but it's not flat. My favorite D. D, listen, he said anybody can believe. Anybody can make anything happen. So all them pictures that you post using AI, anything could happen. D's a friend of mine. I pick on her all the time.
Cool.
But
cool. That's a good point, what you said about AI. The interesting thing about my story that I'm going to get into today is this from 1966. And I lived during that period, and there was no AI. There were no satellites. There was nothing else in space. So what makes this story particularly beautiful and poignant is that this stuff occurred before any falsification that is so rampant today could have been perpetrated. And that's why it's a great.
That's what's interesting about it.
Yeah.
And again, folks, if you're just joining us and you're curious about what Ed's got going on, we're talking about the Gemini XI program, the sanitation of documents. So basically, we're talking about when documented history raises more questions than answers. If you've got questions, drop them into the chat. D, I know you got a question. Maybe is Mary an alien? We could ask that question. That's my other grandparent. But if you have questions, and make sure you're giving a like, share, and follow. It might sound cliche. It does help us a ton. So Gemini 11, its purpose was to show that we could have these interactions between two celestial bodies, have them interact after a landing, and still start to work things back. So that makes sense to me. So the question, though, is why, other than, I could see if it was like, hey, we don't want the Russians to know that we figured this out and they could study this film or something, especially in that time frame, because that was the space race. I could see that. But other than that, why sanitize the information?
Well, basically, one of my favorite things, and first of all, guys, just so you know, I'm not going to dwell upon the pictures, but this is an image intensive study. Okay, I've got over 16,000 frames of National Archive NASA film footage. No one has ever retrieved from them before. 16,000 frames. I've been through it all. I've got amazing images in my books for you to see. And I'm going to hold briefly up, just so you know, you can go to Amazon.com. I particularly have put lots of pictures on the covers of my book, just because it's important. Not everybody can afford to purchase a book, but everybody needs to know that what I've discovered is something that is truly a breakthrough in the history. I'm just going to hold this up briefly for you here. Kids, what you're looking at the back cover of my first book. The first book is The Simpkinson NASA Archive UFO. And right there on the cover, you can see the lithograph, the CIA sanitized briefing document that was discovered in the back of the Gemini 11 binder. And that is what I'm talking about. It's a halftone lithograph. But on the back cover right there, kids, get it kind of close where you might be able to see. Do you see that? It looks like an old garage, and you can see what it turns out to be is the very first Mercury space capsule. In the center, you see a beautiful young woman who is Emily Ertl, who is the very first female employee at NASA in Cape Canaveral, and she is tucked in the arms of a chubby-looking fellow, and that is Scott Simpkinson, who is the engineer leader of the Space Task Group that built that very first Mercury project. And you ask why there are sanitized briefing documents.
Yeah, why? Why? I don't know.
It's great. One thing, and I'll just show you right here. That's the sanitized briefing document. You see that word unclassified right there?
Right.
And you say, well, if that's a UFO, an unclassified document, why would it be unclassified if it's such a secret document? Well,
Right.
We're lucky right now we have the Gulf War to give you an idea and to affirm very simply for you what you're looking at. Right now, when you look at the images of U.S. missile strikes on ships in the Gulf War and you see it on TV, next time they show that, look at the top of the missile footage, okay? When you look at the top of the footage on TV, you will see this word right here, unclassified. Not only will you see unclassified, but this is from 1966. It is the exact same font that has not changed since 1966. You could take that unclassified and lay it right on top of your TV, and you will see it is the exact same font. And what they've done is they've had to sanitize that military footage because you don't want the Soviet Union or China or any of our enemies to look at what that fighter craft is showing. It'll be showing air speeds. It'll be showing directional finders. It'll be who knows all the different data that is on that screen. That has been sanitized so that they can show it on TV. And that's
so why the Simpkin project though? Why sanitize that? And Eileen, I know this is right this is in my aunt's wheelhouse. I know it.
Oh, cool.
She's in Montana, so they've all got tin hats on.
Cool. No, yeah. Who knows what they see out there? I love going out west. The big sky.
Montana has the most UFO sightings of anywhere in the country, I believe, isn't it?
I don't know really where the most sightings are, but I know there's some important military Air Force bases out there that I'm sure missile sites and stuff that frequently seem to get visited by unidentified phenomena. But basically, you want to know why that happens. You have to go back and understand. And that's what this is, my third book. And this is what I'm going to explain and focus on today. And this is the one, the Simpkinson NASA UFO, the CIA sanitized briefing document they never intended you to see, pull the wool from your eyes, and report to Congress. I just got back from spending a week in Congress, and I've spoken with 4 representatives and 2 senators, and I've presented this 3 years' work. And it's been the culmination of a very long and extensive research project. And on the back, you can see, again, like I said, you can see some of the pictures of NASA images of UFOs that I've found and discovered. What the book is pointing out is that NASA has been used as a red herring. Many of you are familiar with the congressional hearings on UFOs, and they will call a NASA official up in front of him. He will put one hand on the Bible. He will raise his other hand, and they will say, you guys have been taking pictures for 70 years. Do you have any images of UFOs? And they say, with their hand on the Bible, and you've heard this on probably fairly soon, they say, no, we don't have any images. You've heard that. Everyone's heard that. And it leaves a bad taste in people who are believers' mouth, because they're saying, well, we've seen all this other evidence. You can't tell me that they don't have any. Well, I'm here to tell you the whole purpose of this book is the secret top secret documents I've uncovered, I will read to you and show you they were telling the truth. NASA does not have any images of UFOs. They were not lying. They were not lying. They did not have them. And I'll just get right into it because
hold on a sec. I gotta ask some questions. Hold on. Pause for a moment.
Yeah.
So, but didn't we just have briefings recently in Congress with naval aviators? Because nobody cares about Air Force pilots. Naval aviators are way better.
Listen, what branch were you in again? I gotta.
Marine Corps.
Yeah, okay.
We have the seventh largest Air Force in the world is in the Marine Corps. If you didn't know,
you got it, brother.
And here's the other side of that is you can't land an Air Force plane on an aircraft carrier. Did you know that you can't land an Air Force plane on an aircraft carrier? They're not
structurally built. They can't take that.
They can't take the up force. So here's my question though is, and then Dee's got a question also.
Sure.
They just announced it. They're like, listen, we have footage of UFOs. We have images of UFOs. We have pilots saying, hey, here's images on FLIR that we cannot determine. They're tracked. Okay, so that you're saying that's not NASA. Okay, I got what you're saying. Well, listen,
NASA is where they have testified.
Listen, NASA is also where when the CIA decided that they wanted to bring a bunch of German Nazi scientists to the U.S. and they needed somewhere to hide them, they hid them in NASA. For anyone who doesn't realize that, go read a book. And Dee has an interesting question for you. She goes, do you believe Area 51 was a real thing? When we hear stories about, hey, this is what's going on there, this is what's happening there. Do you believe that's real, or is that another red herring to distract us from what's really going on?
No, Area 51 is an extremely classified secret workspace for all our aerospace industry and all our military. That is a proven fact. We know that some of our greatest military achievements, the SR-71 Blackbird, the U-2 spycraft, all these fantastic things, plus more that are coming out all the time that we don't even know about, but that we've been using probably for 15 or 20 years now, were also developed there. So it is a place. Now, as to the UFO part of it, I'm not going to get into that. My particular forte is this. I'm not a UFO guy, guys. I'm a rare book and document dealer. I've gone to auctions for the last 20 years, and I buy rare books and I buy rare documents. Now, when I buy those things at an auction, I don't sell on eBay. I sell in the world's finest auction houses. I will buy a map, and I'll buy it for $1, and I'll sell it for 10 grand.
Can we talk about maps? Can we talk about maps? I fell down this rabbit hole, Ed.
Sure.
You had to bring up maps, and then I got to tell you, I have a friend of mine who has another show. Who he is he is an auction dealer. He actually owned at one point in time. His name's Doug. He owned at one point in time all the original sketches from the guy who found Tutankhamun's tomb, and he sold them.
How fun! That's what I do. That's what I love.
I think that's so cool.
I'm a treasure hunter, guys, and that's what I am. I'm a treasure hunter. My only skill, there you. My only skill.
He wouldn't know what I was drinking, so. but what is your on some of these maps? So I've seen stories about it. I don't, I'm not a cartographer. I don't understand the whole of it, but where they show maps where it's like, and there's a lot of different rabbit holes with this. Like, hey, there's maps that show where Atlantis should be because these other early explorers had mapped this stuff out. They took the time to map it out. Even our maps today are not accurate because we show Greenland as this massive place. Greenland's not that big, folks. When you really look at it on a map, Greenland's not that huge.
Or on a globe, the best way to get actual size is to use a globe because the Mercator lines distort things on flat maps. So they're trying to represent sizes, and that's why you need to get a globe. And then when you get a globe, you can actually then compare sizes, because a flat map has to be distorted to get all the lines on.
That
So
makes sense.
yeah, it's absolutely why maps are flat maps are distorted when compared with the globe.
So
So yeah.
what's your thoughts though on some of these early maps that really were showing where, before we say we discovered North America, that were showing North America already
Well,
on.
one of the most famous ones is the Peary-Reese map. As you
Okay.
recall, the Peary-Reese map was purportedly a map of Antarctica, taken back in the early Arabian days, and Peary-Reese, I think, was supposedly an Arab cartographer, and it's been shown again. The sensationalism has to be approached from many different ways. As an authenticator, I have to approach everything I buy from more than one perspective, because if I buy it and I can't authenticate it, I cannot sell it. Okay. And I lose my fortune. So it's very important that I cover every aspect of it. And the Peary-Reese map is just an excellent example of that. When you go on and you look at the television shows and they show you and they tell you that it's an exact copy of Antarctica before there was ice, et cetera, et cetera, you have to really go with a critical eye, and you have to do the research necessary to find out that actually it is an old map, but what it is, it's not Antarctica. It's not presented as Antarctica. It's in a vertical position, not in the horizontal position you would see on a globe map. And it's actually a bay, okay, in Brazil. And it's actually a bay, and it matches exactly in Brazil. But the whole world, we're such a corrupt species, and that's the one thing I'm going to tell you, kids. What I'm telling you and what I'm going to show you is
Yeah.
not what Ed Wilson says. What I'm going to show you is actual documents, and my books actually tell you where you can get online to the government sites that have the actual documents. And don't believe me, I'm a skeptic. I've had to be my whole life. This is a dangerous world, and anyone who's had a chance to explore some of the dangers out there knows that it's very, very important to be cautious and don't trust anyone, because con men are very convincing. I'm very convincing. I'm probably convincing some of you people right now that what you're hearing is the truth. Regardless, it is the truth, because what I'm telling you is don't believe me. I'm going to show you the documents right now. And
So
these
let's talk about the
documents,
documents.
very good. Here's what I've found out. We were talking about how for 70 years they've stood NASA up. They've sworn we don't have any UFO um, uh, pictures, and they've been used, and everybody gets a bad taste in their mouth, because
Absolutely.
the people who believe say, "Oh, you've got to be lying," and it's just been a disservice to NASA, because they don't. And here's exactly why. This is a little briefing page. Now, I've got my books are well over 3,000 pages, tons and tons of book, scores and scores of CIA documents, scores and scores of NASA archive files. And I have to approach it. One little document in this file may say one thing, but you have to match it with two other documents from two other outfits to prove that what it's saying is true. And so it's a complicated story. But I've got 3 documents here that I will read to you, okay, very short, and they will explain to you just exactly why NASA lost control of its images. And the headline is as follows, and this is what I presented to some of the news outfits in Washington just last week. This is my headline: Top Secret National Reconnaissance Office Documents. NASA film intercepted. Astronaut Gordon Cooper threatened fistfight as images were seized, downgraded, and never returned.
So who seized them?
And that's where I'll start. 3 documents right here. I will read these to you, and then you can question and see what they are. The first one, and this is the core evidence, is a top secret National Reconnaissance Office directive from August 9, 1965 by Brockway McMillan. It's confirming that intelligence authority over space-based imagery. Now, the National Reconnaissance Office was formed in 1960 and was a top secret organization that they did not even admit existed until 1990.
I've never heard it.
1990. I know. That's why it took me so long to get the Freedom of Information Act to search their files, okay? Because I didn't hear. I was an old man in 1992, and that's why I searched originally all the CIA files.
Hold on. What's the name of this organization? What's the name of it again?
National Reconnaissance Office.
National
NRO.
Yeah, there it is. National NRO, National Reconnaissance Office. I've never even heard of this.
Yeah, okay, well, listen to what he says. Brockway McMillan was the scientist they hired to form the National Reconnaissance Office. The reason it was top secret was because you have to understand what happened. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched the R-7 intercontinental ballistic missile, the very first intercontinental ballistic missile launched in 1957. That changed everything. The reason it changed everything was we had the Soviet Union hemmed in with radar all the way from Alaska down to just everywhere. And nuclear bombs, they had the hugest hydrogen bomb, but they were flying these huge Tu-52 or 54 Russian Bear propeller-driven bombers that took 5 hours to get from Moscow just to the border of Europe, of Western Europe. So we knew about their nuclear threat that we were living with, but my God, we had them hemmed in with radar. We'd have 5 hours warning time to perhaps negotiate an end to the strike, or to send out aircraft interceptors. Right? We had a fair shot at it when 1957 rolled out, and they launched the R-7 first intercontinental ballistic missile. Nuclear warfare was reduced from hours to minutes. Everybody pooped their drawers, buddy. And I was alive then, and we had a reason to poop our drawers. It was reduced from hours to minutes, and we had no response. Now, you have to understand, when the space race started back then, we had treaties all over the world for centuries and centuries where we said such things as, well, if you bring one of your warships within 3 miles of our shoreline, then we reserve the right to attack it and board it and do whatever we want with it. We had treaties saying that. Everybody understood the treaties. And of course, everyone breaks treaties just as we do today. But at least we had the treaties to allow us to get by with most of the work. When the space race started, there were no treaties. Every space launch had to be viewed as a possible ICBM attack. We were constantly on the verge of nuclear war. And I have the documents, National Security Action Memo 153, also in the book. And I've got the copies in the book that you're reading here. You can read them for yourself. Don't believe me. Believe what I'm telling you is that these are the documents, and you can read them for yourself. They took charge of all the photographs because we had a program called the Corona program. Many of you will remember it was our first satellite spy program on the Soviet Union and its vast unknown missile and military capabilities. The Corona program was a polar satellite with a camera of high definition that was scouting all of their Soviet missile bases that we knew nothing about. But we were so primitive that we couldn't land that film. The film would be ejected from the Corona satellite on a parachute, and it would be picked up by fighter jets or by B-52s or reconnaissance craft in midair.
Okay, I've seen that
before. And they would bring the film back. And that's what the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, was hiding. And that's where things like Q clearance, Beitman clearance, that's where those terms originated. So those were top secret clearances. So that was the first document that I told you about. And here's the next one. Documentation of film interception at the aircraft carrier recovery stage. Angry astronaut Gordon Cooper threatens a fistfight. In 1965, when the Gemini 5, and this is the Gemini 5, so not Gemini 11, this was a year prior to Gemini 11, when Gemini 5 launched, Gordon Cooper was the commander of the two-man Gemini 5 capsule. All Geminis were two-man crews. That's hence the name Gemini twins. So,
okay, makes sense.
Yep. And so that'll be included here. But you have to remember, we did our space flights just like we do now. We would land them in the ocean. A helicopter would pick it up, and then it would put it on the deck of the carrier, right? Then the astronauts would get out, and we would bring them home. Now, this is the third document that I will read these to you. The excerpts here, direct quotes, and it's what explains. It was what explains why this guy right here, why that guy, Scott Simpkinson, got the CIA briefing document. Okay. He started with NACA, the National Aeronautics Council, which was a precursor to NASA, in 1943. So he worked all the way through the V-2 rockets, through Wallops Island testing. Wow. And then he is the guy who was the lead engineer. When the R-7 launched, or when the Sputnik launched, we had nothing in return. We immediately created the Space Task Group. What you're looking at right there is the Cleveland contingent from Lewis Field of the Space Task Group. That's the very first Mercury capsule. They built it right there. This picture is from 1959, and that's them returning from Florida, where they created Cape Canaveral and the launch pads and everything, and the blockhouses there. And this guy, Scott Simpkinson, was the man who was in charge of that. And he became.
So where does Scott Simpkinson come from, though? I guess, like,
he comes from Pequot, Ohio. He graduated from the University of Cincinnati in 1943 with a degree in mechanical engineering. From there, he went specifically straight to Lewis Airfield in Cleveland, Ohio. Lewis Airfield was the Army Air Force. And remember, that's the other thing that makes this such a complicated tracking system. The Army Air Force was the precursor to
the Air
Force, right? So Lewis Field was the Army Air Force Research Center. Specifically, he was tasked with destructive testing of propellers for all the fighters and bombers and various aircraft that were fighting World War II. So their specialty was destructive testing. And that's just exactly what you need when you have a new program, because you have all the mechanical calculations showing how something should work. But until you do the destructive testing, you don't know if you've forgotten something in those calculations.
How do you break that thing? Yeah,
exactly. And that's why when people see, what's his name? Elon Musk, when he launches those huge spaceships up into the air, and you see them rise majestically with power, and you see them go, and then you see them explode into a million pieces. And my God, people are going, listen to them clap. You go to the control center, the thing just blew up, and everyone is cheering madly. That's destructive testing. Scott Simpkinson did the first 17 Mercury programs. I bought everything he had. I bought the whole archive, kids. 17 launches, only 6 of them were manned, and at least half of them blew up right in front of the astronauts' eyes. The guys who were going to climb on those little tin cans and fly into space on them, watch them explode right before their eyes. The courage of these military men is extraordinary. They're a wonderful story. And Gordon Cooper, who you're going to hear here, he is my hero. He is an American hero, and you will hear why. So now, I told you that NASA does not have the film. And here are the synopsis. The entire documents are in the book. The first one's only 3 pages, but I'm just going to cover briefly what Brock McMillan said to Robert Siemens. Robert Siemens was the titular associate head of NASA in Washington, D.C., right? You have the mechanics and the engineers. Scott Simpkinson is the hands-on mission control chief engineer through every single program while he lived until 1996. Okay, so he was the mission control chief engineer, and that's why you will see how he gets in this line of authority for the CIA briefing document. And then again, like I said, he was doing top secret stuff in 1943 for the Army Airfield in Lewis Field, who they sent to Florida to create NASA. So that's where he comes from, kids. So this is just really in line, and I'll give you more details later on how beautiful the collection was. But here's the Brockway Macmillan Memorandum. It's a 3-page top secret memorandum dated August 9, 1965 from the National Reconnaissance Office Director Brockway Macmillan, states explicitly in regard to NASA photography. Okay, this is in quotes. I'm just going to read the quotes here instead of the 3 pages. Quote 1, all Gemini acquired photography, both NASA and Department of Defense sponsored, is processed at the Manned Spacecraft Center Photography Laboratory in Houston. And that to this day, that's the true statement at that time. And to this day, that's what everybody believes still happens. Now, that's his first statement. Then he says, he continues, quotes, I question whether either of these delegations is appropriate to matters of potential national and international concern. Remember, he's hiding the spy craft over Russia, the Corona, okay? The Soviet Union, our own allies, every time we flew a mission over our own allies, they complained about spying. Nobody wanted it. The Russians complained even though they were doing it, but they realized very quickly, they quit complaining when they said, oh, well, we can do the same thing. So there's only 2 of us, so we're going to quit bitching, right? So that's that. So, but he's concerned about that. He further writes, and this is the part that's important. This is where the first skiff is located. And by skiff, you know what I mean, a secure briefing facility where you can bring secrets out under top security. He further writes, in the Washington area, the National Photographic Interpretation Center has a unique capability for both quality processing and interpretation of aerial photographs. I believe it would be our mutual benefit to transfer responsibility for processing, orientation, and interpretation of future Gemini or similar series photographs from the Mission Control Center to the National Photographic Interpretation Center, created by the CIA. I have the actual documents, two volumes, each 80 pages long, from 1957 and 58, where they created it. And I even have the lithograph machine that this is printed on that they ordered for that. And the research, I can go for hours, kids. I'm giving you a reduced version because I'm exhausted after 3 years. But
I can imagine.
I'm going to continue because we need to get through this because there is so much corresponding evidence, but this one should be the clincher. And then he says he wants the National Photographic Interpretive Center to process NASA's film. No longer mission control, which everyone to this day believes does it, right? He says, and this is the most striking recommendation concerning the handling of exposed film immediately after recovery of the spaceship. Quote, and this is keeping it secret. This is not to be known by other people. This is what this states. Since you probably wish to avoid any arrangement which infers the involvement of NASA in a classified endeavor, I recommend that procedures for high-speed delivery and exposed Department of Defense and NASA film from the aircraft carrier to MPIC be arranged in a manner which will preclude contact with or reference to either the National Reconnaissance Office or the National Photographic Interpretive Center by NASA personnel or Department of Defense personnel on duty with NASA who are not properly cleared for National Reconnaissance Program access. Our biggest secret, the National Reconnaissance Program, Q clearance, Beitman clearance, all mentioned in these documents. Okay, wow. That's where those clearances come from, and that's why, because it's nearly an act of international war to fly those spy planes over when you don't have treaties like that. Now, this becomes the thing that I want you to remember, because this name that comes up here in McMillan's document is going to come up in the next two documents, and they will seal the instance. And this is in quotes, and I've got it in big letters, kids. As a suggestion, it may be feasible for Colonel Sweet of your security staff to arrange pickup and delivery of the film. I would make arrangements for release of Department of Defense material to him or his representative on the carrier. Now, first of all, NASA, which you kids don't realize, was a civilian agency. That's how we kept the Russians from attacking us. That's how we let our allies relax that we weren't spying on them. But here is the acknowledgement that there were Department of Defense experiments on the civilian craft. So already that's why this is a top secret document. But remember that name, Colonel Sweet. We'll send Colonel Sweet to the aircraft carrier to pick it up. Okay?
All right. Give me one second.
Hold on. Nope. Nope. You let me finish the screen.
Finish, God. Finish it.
I'm going to let you ask every question you want out there. Everyone get ready. This final two are the clinchers. Remember Colonel Sweet? Boom. Yes. The documentary chain continues in a memorandum dated September 4th, 1965. Following a review meeting, the memoranda records. Following the review, Gordon Cooper mentioned to me that he'd called Dr. Siemens earlier in the week to express his concern about the handling of NASA film. And quotes again, double quotes. He stated that he was damned unhappy with the arrangement, and had he known that Colonel Sweet was picking up all the film, he would have had a fist fight on his hands aboard the carrier, because he damn sure wouldn't have taken the NASA film. Unquote, ladies and gentlemen. Gordon Cooper, American hero, okay? He was the pilot of that Mercury capsule. When he landed in the ocean, they picked up his craft, put it on the deck of the carrier, and Colonel Sweet took all the film, as Brockway McMillan said, including the NASA film, which our hero, Gordon Cooper, says there would have been a fist fight because he wouldn't have taken it. And then he states further that this was supposed to be a national program and should be handled in that fashion. He stated that he was speaking as a NASA man. He indicated they would not hear the end of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that's evidence trail number 2. Brockway McMillan says Colonel Sweet will pick it up. Cooper says, if I'd known he was taking our NASA film off the aircraft carrier, I would have kicked his ever-loving beep. Okay? Now, the third document, and this is what I've looked for. For 3 years, I've been trying to tie in the authoritative chain of Simpkinson in there. We know that Simpkinson had top secret clearance all the way back to working in 1943 for the destructive testing of airplane propellers. And this is what I discovered next. The custody chain documentation does not stop there. A memorandum dated September 3rd records a meeting between Scott Simpkinson. Quotes, Colonel McKee received a call indicating, that, and this is further quotes, Mr. Simpkinson was quite upset after having learned that all the film was not turned over to Mr. Gammon the night before. The memorandum continues. Colonel McKee asked Mr. Simpkinson in to meet with him and me. This gent was quite upset. Quieting his concern took quite some doing. And that puts Scott Simpkinson, chief engineer of NASA, directly in line for interception of all NASA film. And that's why he had the clearance necessary to receive that CIA briefing document. And those 3 documents right there are not Ed Wilson telling you a story. You need to dwell upon that fact and see if it does not register with you as it does me. We don't want NASA to have it anymore. It's too dangerous. If the astronaut knew that they were taking the NASA film, he would have fist fought him. And 3, Scott Simpkinson says, "Where's my film? You did not give it to my subordinate, Mr. Gannon." Now, those 3 documents right there are just the beginning of the story, because the rest of the documents come from David James and the degradation issue. And David James was the archivist for the National Air and Space Museum at the Smithsonian Institute. He's written 3 books and numerous papers, all of which I've read and recorded and retrieved this information from. And they have to do specifically with the CIA and the spy agencies and their relationship to NASA that nobody knew about. And when he says, Admiral Rayburn informed Webb, who is the NASA head, that he'd established a screening procedure in October 1965, okay, and that there was withheld or possibly released film in degraded form. As best as can be determined, the D6 experiment produced over 200 images, but only a few were ever disseminated. Now that's 200 images from the Gemini 11 or the Gemini 5 craft that never got explained. Not only that,
I gotta read an ad here, Ed. I gotta get this out. Okay,
go right ahead.
Celebrating independence. This week, as we celebrate the 4th of July, we're reminded that some of the best traditions are the ones shared with family, friends, and neighbors. Whether we're firing up the grill, watching fireworks, or spending time around the backyard with people who matter most, make the occasion one to remember. This episode is proudly brought to you by New Scotland Spirits, small batch, handcrafted whiskey made right here in New York. Made with locally sourced grain, crafted with pride, every bottle reflects the independent spirit that defines both great whiskey and this great country. So this Independence Day, celebrate responsibly, appreciate the freedoms we enjoy, and raise a glass to the people who make those freedoms possible. Visit newscotlandspirits.com to find your next bottle. New Scotland Spirits, proudly crafted in New York, perfect for celebrating America's independence. All right, so listen, folks, because we're almost to the end of the show here, Ed. Okay. We've got, if you want to know what Ed's got going on, folks, again, if you Google Simpkinson sanitized briefing documents, that's a tough name to say. Simpkinson sanitized briefing documents, you'll find all 3 of Ed's books. You spent time with, was it either congressmen or senators? You just got back from D.C.
Yes, just last week.
Just got back. You sent me some of the pictures of the people. In a Reader's Digest version, what is your goal with meeting them? What is your goal with telling people, hey, NASA didn't get these photos they thought they were supposed to get? What is our goal here?
The goal is here. Mike Gold, head of Redwire, who is a former NASA speaker. He spoke 3 years ago. I was already working on the case that just got authorized by Congress during this disclosure summit. They announced that from here on out, they were going to allow funding for a thorough search of NASA archives for UFO information. Okay. I had already started 3 years ago, and this is what you're going to find out. This is NASA, red photograph, S66 54585. That image right there can be found on March to the Moon. That's the actual NASA image. Inside, the thing that's laid over in the big black screen right there, that is on page 4 of the 12-year secret mission report. It shows the exact same thing. There's an actual overlay. It's not any AI manipulation. You just lay the image over on the actual NASA photo, and it's an exact match, and it's page 4 of this 12-year secret mission. And then 4%, I did finally, after 3 years of searching thousands and thousands of images trying to find it, you see right there.
There's something there.
That is the lithograph. That's the UFO you see right there. The one with portholes on it. I will show you the big image, but look at the cloud overlay. The cloud pattern matches. It does not match a little bit. It does not match approximately. It matches exactly. This lithograph was made from this NASA photo. That NASA photo was intercepted by the National Photographic Interpretive Center and the National Reconnaissance Office, and hence NASA can never check it out, okay? Because they never got it back.
Let me make sure I understand. Okay.
Yep.
I need to understand. So if I'm understanding you right, so NASA released a photo, and in their photo, that's that sanitized image. You had access to the lithograph that lays directly over that same photo, which is the original actual image, almost the negative, that actually shows in that image there was something out in the horizon that they were able to see, but could not determine what it was.
It's not in the photo. You can see the image, the clouds match exactly. Right. So the lithograph covers it. But the significance is this, and you can read Richard Underwood, the guy who was the head of NASA's film department, states on page 32 of the 41-page oral interview with him, he says, no one has ever seen more than a third generation NASA photo.
So then they're not getting the images.
That's a NASA document.
But there are images. You're saying that there are real images out there of UFOs.
And I'm saying this briefing document comes from here, and you need to find out. And here's the other thing Richard Underwood tells you. You know how you can tell a first generation NASA photo? He tells you right there, and it's in all the documents I read. The film that they used in the cameras on the NASA missions was the thickness of saran wrap.
Okay.
So if Congress wants to know if it's seen a first generation direct negative, it'll be the thickness of saran wrap. Read it. That's in Oral Archive Histories. Richard Underwood, the head of the NASA program, hired by Werner von Braun. He says right there, no one's, and you talk about the deadliness of it right on page 2 of that. He was working on the U-2 spy planes before he came to NASA, before NASA formed, and he was doing a mission in Honduras. And while he was doing the mission in Honduras, he met a Honduran woman. He married her. They had 4 children. They graduated from high school in Houston and Mission Control, where he ended up his career. But when he married her, he was called in to the office of the general who was running his program. And these are on quotes, page 2, Richard Underwood, Oral History. I should take you out and have you shot right now without a trial for marrying that woman. NASA, okay? NASA Oral Histories, Richard Underwood, page 2.
Wow. Listen, folks, we got to get right. And this is fascinating to me.
Documents. Don't believe me. I've got documents by the score, and that's just the start of it. I can go on for 6 hours and tell you.
It sounds like it. There's a lot going on here. Listen, folks, if you want to know what Ed's got going on, where can they find you at, Ed? If somebody wanted to reach out to you,
reach out to me. Go to the name is Seth Lamancusa on YouTube. Seth Lamancusa, Lamancusa. Seth is my young protege who handles my technical aspects for me since I'm incompetent in technical capabilities. And he has a website with all 16,000 frames of film. I've got 16,000 frames of film from, just real quick so you can see it here, from the National Archives. They told me at Color Lab, the only one of the 3 labs that ever was authorized to do National Archive film. Look at these images. Look at the blue flying saucer. That's frame 15,196 from this film footage of the D-15 experiment. This is just the second book. And then look at that one. And look at this. This is by Dr. Brown of Ohio State University, who was also out there. He did this for me. There's the Simpkinson saucer. You see the lithograph saucer? Look at that. Look at the strange configuration of lights. That is frame 15,156. Look at the matching frame configuration. So you have the D-15 experiment. You have this the sanitized briefing document, the matching lights. You have the blue flying saucer. You have the Mauer. There's just other images that I found.
It's fascinating. There's tons of stuff out there.
It's NASA stuff. It's not anyone telling stories. All my documents.
It's documented. You just got to find it. You just got to go out and find it.
I've got it. The books tell you where to find it.
Ed's got
you can look for yourself.
Ed's got it. Well, listen, folks, as we do every week, because we got to get ready to close things up here at the bar. Next week, we're talking with a gentleman named Pete McCarroll. He's a profit-first professional running a CAS practice and the founder of the AI Accountant. I love this phrase here, like B, spotting a missing link between need and solution. He built an AI training system specifically for mid-market CAS firms because it's been too long. Accountants were handed tech that just didn't click for how work really happens. So we're going to be talking about how he built that, how he put this whole thing together. I'm telling you now, folks, go check out the Simpkinson sanitized briefing documents, the books that Ed wrote. See what he's got happening here. My aunt just said what you're talking about is absolutely fascinating. As we do every week here on the show, Ed, and don't log off on me, the guest always gets the final word. So what's our final word for tonight?
Ladies and gentlemen, I've presented this stuff now to Congress for them to take over. I've been doing for 3 years what they just authorized Mike Gold to do, to search thoroughly the NASA archives. You can find in the Dow Purge number 1, page 16 of the first batch of released stuff by Mr. Trump. At the top of the page, the Apollo 17 craft, it shows one image on the surface of the moon, 3 dots over the mountain range. Before you download that one image, you look to the left, and it says right there, in words, in the very latest purge, in the Apollo 17 mission, we have now determined that this is a real object. It's not a lens flare. However, we are not going to release more information until we recheck everything using the original photographs. All the photos have been degraded. I have the photos have been shown to degraded. They had 10 to 20 foot visibility resolution on the original NASA film, and the National Reconnaissance Office, I have the documents. When they released the interpositives, the resolution was only 100 feet.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in. This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.